What if the problem isn't you? What if you're in the wrong room? My suspicion? You're not broken and you don't need to be fixed. You have outgrown where you are. Let's get more space and freedom to redesign the life you deserve. Welcome to the Reinvention Room. I'm Allison Hare, coach for ambitious women making big changes, and we are rethinking everything we've been taught. Part pop culture, part real talk, and all smarter ways to live life on your own terms. I'm so excited. I have Elyse Archer back on the Reinvention Room. Welcome back, Elyse.
Thank you, Allison. This is so fun. I just love you. I've been looking forward to this all day. Actually, like all week beyond that. So.
You are so sweet. What's very interesting is I was thinking about how much has happened in my life that was planted by you so many years ago in Salesforce. And, you know, when I was working for Salesforce, not in the CRM literally, but our connection from so many years ago, I was starting to see how many seeds have sprouted from you introducing me to so much. And I thought, I really want to, you've evolved so much and your frameworks have evolved so much. And the way that you serve people, specifically women, corporate women, women who are ascending into a position of leadership or growing beyond into CEO and 6, 7, 8-figure, 8-figure marks. And I thought, my goodness, my audience really needs to hear from you again, because I really want to unpack maybe some of the findings that you have, having the kind of community that you've built with She Sells and Superhuman Selling podcast. But starting with your own story, which is so remarkable and so transformative. And I think about your story all the time whenever I think I could either rest or I could level up. I think of Elyse Archer. And I think of this story, and I thought it would be a perfect place to start if you'd be willing to share.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Thank you. And it's funny as you talk about reinvention and growth. I forgot that you were at Salesforce when we first connected, because I just look at everything you've done and where you are now. Isn't it? It's just wild how much transformation can happen when you say, I'm ready to step into the fullness of who I am, the fullness of who I came here on the planet to be, which I think is really a lot of what prompted my own personal evolution. So more than happy to share at a high level, and please direct me to any more details that you think would be helpful. But yes, a little over 4 years ago, I had found myself in a place where life was good in many ways, but not great, and had this was after a period of time in my 20s where I had overcome eating disorders, sexual assault, like a divorce. I mean, a lot of stuff that had felt challenging in that decade, and had really done a lot of personal reinvention, I would say. Up until that point, I had left corporate, was running my own company, remarried to an amazing man. We had a 4-month-old son. He was our first son. And, in a place where, again, things were pretty good. Things were pretty good. And yet there was this calling in my soul. And I think that maybe many of your listeners can relate to this, where I was like, there's something bigger for me out there. And I remember the turning point was right after our first son, Jack, was born. I was up late night nursing him. And when you're up late night nursing, you gotta be quiet. So you can either doom scroll or you can read or do something along those lines. And so I was reading a book by Bronnie Ware called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And if someone is listening that is not familiar with that book, Bronnie was a hospice care worker who sat on people's deathbeds and said that people on their deathbed have 5 most common regrets that they shared. And the number one regret that people shared was I wish I had the courage to live a life true to me rather than what everyone else expected of me. And I just remember late night in a dimly lit room, sitting upstairs, in his nursery, reading that and actually getting real with myself about how much I was hiding in my life at that time. I was partnered with amazing people who run a powerhouse personal branding company, which is how you and I connected. And love, love,
I'm
love
familiar
them.
with it.
You're a little bit familiar with it, right? Absolutely phenomenal. Like some of my best friends to this day. And from a place of self-awareness, I was still hiding in that. I had had a vision for myself for quite some time of like really having my own company, my own brand, being willing to be visible as the face, being on stages, etc. And yet there was part of me that didn't feel worthy and was afraid I couldn't do it. And so I had been hiding for many years behind that and behind other people with that. Simultaneously, I had a vision for much more in my life financially and in terms of lifestyle and impact. I wanted to be able to do things like retire my husband from his night shift respiratory therapy job, which with a 4 month old and during COVID too, there was, not an ideal situation for us, but we couldn't do that financially because we needed his income too at the time. I was dealing with a lot of like money stress and money blocks. And so for over a decade, actually leading up to that point, I had struggled with that. And it was like, no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I would grind and hustle, I could never make past. For me, it was low six figures. And I always was in just like anxiety and fear about money too. Um, and I just felt that there was something much greater I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to have greater freedom. I wanted to have greater abundance. I wanted to make greater impact and actually live the life that had been on my vision board for so long that I would just typically look at and feel, resentful about or be like, where is it? Why isn't it happening? And simultaneously, right before this, one of my dear friends, who was also my podcast co-host at the time, one of my podcast co-hosts, there were three of us, but he was one of them, Greg, his name is Greg. He passed away in his sleep at age 39 and left behind a wife and 5 kids and had gone for a run the night before and then just like never woke up the next morning. And I wasn't that much younger than him at the time. And I just remember reading that book and thinking, I don't know how long I have left. I hope I have a lot more time left. I think I have a lot more time left. But if I were to go now, I would never have actually seen how good life could get. I would have never have seen my full potential. And it was right around the time of my birthday. And so the wish I made that year on my birthday was different than the wishes I would make on previous years. On previous years, I would say like, oh, I want a nicer house. I want more money. I want a sexier body, right? All the things that are kind of
Right.
like the surface level desires. But that year I said, I want to experience the fullness of who I am because I realized that I hadn't been doing that in many areas of life. And I've been playing small and hiding. And so fast forward through again, so it's like a long series of events, but I'll try to keep it relatively consolidated. Fast forward, just a couple of days after making that wish and listening to a podcast from shout out to Kayla Kraft. She's a great coach in the space, listening to one of her podcasts. And she mentioned, I've got a spot for a private client. And her particular brand at that time was about helping moms become millionaires. And I was like, yes, like that is me. That's, I'm a mom. I'm a new mom. I want to be a millionaire. Let's do it. And so we get on a discovery call and I'm talking like, yes, yes, yes. I know I want to do this. I know I need to do this. And then I find out that the investment for the coaching is half of what I made the previous year. And I had not been sitting around saving that, or, planning on using that amount of money for coaching. I didn't have it. But what I knew was that I knew that I was being asked to get out of my comfort zone. I knew I had, made that declaration and that um, decision to experience the fullness of who I was, and that I would be guided in the next steps to do that. And so for me, it was this strong intuitive knowing of I've got to invest this much in myself just to get the heck out of my comfort zone, right?
Mm.
And come face to face with every limiting belief I've ever had about myself and money and what I'm capable of. And so, find a way to scrap together a deposit on a credit card. And, I wish I could say immediately everything transformed, but actually I went into what I call like a dark night of the soul for about 3 weeks thinking, who am I to do this? I'm the breadwinner of our family. Have I just put us into financial ruin, financial jeopardy? But what was so beautiful and potent about that time was I had made the choice to get intentionally financially uncomfortable and to have to face every limiting belief I had ever had about money before. And so I go down a rabbit hole in that time of really, really looking at neuroscience, the power of the subconscious mind, doing some powerful inner child work, etc. And in a period of 6 weeks from making that decision to change and transform to, putting down an amount of money that I felt extremely uncomfortable with, and then doing the work, I was able to turn my annual income into my monthly income and launched She Sells and the brand. And today, as we record, it's the 4th birthday of our official first launch of a coaching program within the company as well. And so it's a special day to be recording this and doing this. And there's a lot that's happened in the 4 years since then that I'm happy to speak to. But I think the bottom line of what I would say is that that decision to experience the fullness of who I am and to stop playing and stop playing small and stop hiding has been paramount. And I see our community now doing that again and again and again within themselves. And when they do, that's when all the things that you were chasing and seeking for so long seem to kind of come to you. But it's not from a place of feeling like you need it to be worthy or valid or whole or abundant. It's from a place of actually recognizing your own inherent worthiness, abundance, and value. And then from that place, it's just like, I'm not a super religious person, but it's like the Bible says all these things will be added unto you. So that is, that's like the high level. And I will go wherever you want to go with that.
Yeah, I think it's a remarkable journey of yours, and it is counterintuitive to everything we have been taught. And what I have known about you, Elyse, and working with you, being part of your community, and following you for so long. And it is almost of the distinction between a potentially catastrophic financial decision and betting on yourself. And so the obvious place is, how do you know which is which? How do you know if you have hitched your wagon to the right star, right?
Yeah.
When is it betting on yourself? How do you know? How do you distinguish that?
Yeah, absolutely. So here is what I know is that the size of the risk will always determine the size of the reward. It really will. And the most important thing for me in this journey, and as a woman who had, disconnected from intuition, disconnected from her body, was living completely in my head for so long. And a lot of us do that, whether it's trauma, usually is why we do that, right? We stop listening to our intuition. We stop listening to our inner guidance. And what I know is that when you do tap in and listen, your intuition will always, always, always steer you in the right direction. It will never make logical sense. It's just like Steve Jobs said, you will only be able to connect the dots looking backwards. That's it. So my knowing, my intuition, even though there was plenty of fear, right? And fear is loud. Fear is screaming. Fear is the voice in your head that just goes on and on. That's not your truth though. Your intuition is quiet, it's calm, it's still, it's like a nudge. So my intuition was, I know that I need to move forward on this. It didn't make any logical sense. Um, but I had studied this work enough to know I gotta follow it. And simultaneously, one of the most powerful concepts that I've learned over the course of really studying a lot of this work is, some people call it decision making from the end, some people call it acting from the end, but going to the place where you want to be and then saying, from that place, what choice do I make? And so for me, I knew that I wanted to be a seven figure. At the time, my goal was, I want to be a seven figure business owner, an entrepreneur. I want to be way more visible. I want to really like break out of this box, this cage that I felt like I've been in for so long. What does the woman do who's on the other side of that? She says yes. And so what's important about this, though, Allison, and to your question, is that the energy in which you make that commitment and that decision has to be the energy of, I am succeeding, I am winning, I am doing this. We just had a community member, one of our consultants, share in our group chat yesterday about, she made a decision this way in her life, and it's a decision to do with like governments and trying to get visa to move from Canada to the US and work here. And anyway, she had a choice of whether she was going to go one path, which would be worst case scenario, which would be, this is going to take a long time to get done. I'm not going to be able to move to the States and work like I want to. And she'd been planning for that, and kind of looking at worst case scenario. But then I asked her, like, what would you do if you took the fear out of it? And she said, I would 100% like go show up at the, I don't know, the embassy or what it is now, but like I would make plans that I'm going to get my passport this weekend and my visa this weekend. And it's going to happen. And so she chose to do that.
Yeah,
And
those
all
are
the
her marching
signs.
orders. Wasn't that funny?
I know.
Became her marching orders.
Yeah. And shout out to her for doing it, because she did it, but she did it in perfect faith. She said, I'm doing this in the energy of everything is working out for me. I'm doing this in the energy of, I'm getting exactly what I want here. And she took action, and it was like miracle after miracle. Passport arrived early. She had a beautiful time spending the weekend with her partner in the city they were in. And she took action like that based off of it. But the energy she was in was what influenced the outcome. If another person had tried to take the same actions, but was in a lot of fear and in a lot of like, they were emotionalizing the negative end result, they would have gotten a different outcome. So it's all about what's between the temples. So to kind of come back to your question, what does the still small voice inside of you do? And if you took fear out of it, what choice would you make? That is your truth. That is your guidance. And then the key is, there's not going to be probably no fear in doing it. You're still, if you're really growing, you're going to be bumping up against fear, but come back to the guidance, come back to the inner knowing, and make your choices based off of that.
What is really interesting about that specific time with you 4 years ago, you were showing up before that, at least from my observation, like a lot of people were, a lot of people on the influencers were. And then as soon as that light bulb went off, you showed up completely differently. You were in a very different energy. It was very intentional. It was purposeful. It was, I don't know if it was strategic, but it was like a night and day switch. I'm curious, Elyse, you work with people all the time. What lies do we believe to be true that we don't realize? What is, like when you think about the world tells us, and it's not that we're dumb, right? Like, but what have you discovered that are completely counterintuitive to what we've been told?
Wow. I love that. I mean, I think the lie of the world, right? And the lie of that's in our DNA, it's in our brains, it's something that so many of us have bought into, is the lie of separation, right? So there's that
what does that mean? What's the lie of separation?
Yeah, I know. I've never like quite said, but essentially like that we are actually separate, right? That we are separate beings. And because of that, we need to be in competition. We need to be in scarcity mode. We need to like compete with each other for resources, etc. We judge each other. And so my personal belief, and I said before, I'm not a super religious woman, but I'm a very spiritual woman. I see things very differently. I believe that at our core, everything is wholeness and everything is
Hmm.
actually one, and that we are, use whatever language you want to use, but for me, it's like pieces of the divine all here to experience ourselves in different ways. And so, when you shift your mindset from one of separation where I have to fight and force and compete and judge you, or I've got to, like, if you're doing well, that means I can't. If I have money, that means you can't have it. And we look at the world through and ourselves through a lens of wholeness. Everything changes. There's actually a concept we teach in the community called selling from wholeness, which is about doing this inner work to come back to recognize the inherent wholeness within yourself that so many of us, myself included, will spend a lot of time. And I've done this in my life. I don't do it anymore, but chasing the external for validation, chasing money, success. If I'm in corporate, I've got to be top of the leaderboard. And when we're in that energy, we're actually always in lack. There's always a gap. There's always an energy of not enoughness to what we're doing. And because we're in an energy of not enoughness, the results we're going to get are going to be a mirror of not enoughness. Um, and so to me, it's deeper spiritual work, right? To recognize your own inherent divinity, your own inherent wholeness, and then also to start to see um, the world around you in that way, and to recognize that everyone in your life is just a mirror. Every situation in your life is
Hmm.
just a mirror. If there's a client who's bugging you or someone who's triggering you, the actual work is to say, what are you mirroring that's in me right now? And thank you for mirroring some part of me that needs to be healed or that feels not good enough, rather than getting caught up in trying to control circumstances. And I think that's been one of the biggest shifts, um, with this work and with kind of my own personal evolution over the years, is I used to really get caught up in trying to control circumstances, whether it was my husband was ticking me off, whether it was, if he's listening, I love you. um, or, or like, I don't like the number of the bank account or whatever it is, and try to chase or change the external, rather than going back to say, okay, I know that because of the universal law of cause and effect, every effect, like I am the cause of every effect in my life. So if I want to create a different effect, whether it's a more loving relationship, whether it's a more abundant, overflowing bank account, what would cause that? How could I cause that? Who would I need to be in order to make that change? And so I think that's where so many of us are bought into the illusion of the world of the senses and the 3D, and we run around trying to control circumstances when really everything is your consciousness. So please bring me back if you want to redirect that somewhere, but that's, to me, that's the work. And so we bring this work into the sales and business world. And that's actually where people are able to quantum leap if they're willing to take ownership of their consciousness and ascending and becoming the version of themselves who has everything that they want and desire.
And it sounds like the difference between something that's ego driven, which is very externally driven, to like doubling down on yourself and tapping back in. From a practical standpoint, you have so many frameworks that you apply and help your people in your community apply in a really interesting, helpful way. Can we talk about the 4 quadrants? Can you teach the listener who's like, yeah, this makes perfect sense, but how do I put this into practice? What's the first step?
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing I want to say too, before I share that, is I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with ego. I think we have egos for a reason. I think that we come into individuations for a reason, right? To be able to experience things through the lens of Allison Hare, to be able to experience things through the lens of Elyse Archer. And I'm a woman who loves God and loves luxury and loves Louboutins. And so, like, I don't think there's anything
And
wrong.
an RV, oddly.
I love my RV. Oh
Elise,
my gosh,
Elise
my
hit some
favorite
goals and she bought a big old RV.
of all the things, right?
I know. It's so funny.
I'm dying to get back in it right now. It's in the shop. But but yeah, so I mean we live on in a material plane for a reason. So I want to speak to that for just a moment, because a lot of people will think, oh, I can't be, spiritual and love God and also be really wealthy and abundant or love and appreciate money. And I don't buy into that at all. We live in a material world. Money is a form of energy exchange. It's not the vision, but it's the how of the vision often. And so that actually is one of the four quadrants, which I'll speak to in a minute, is money. But this is not about like going in, at least I feel like my work on the planet is not to guide people who want to go become a monk and live in solitude and sell all their possessions. And although I think that's beautiful if that's your path, but I think there's also a way that we can, and a place where we can experience the fullness of all life has to offer, experience great financial abundance, overflowing money, all of that, have really beautiful, rich lives in all areas, and simultaneously be more connected to God, spirit, source, universe, whatever language you want to use, than ever before. So and I think ego's got a lot of different faces to it.
Yeah.
But when we fall in love with like, who's the version of me that I came to be here on the planet, and let our personality really unfold in that, and let our personal preferences unfold in that, I think that's beautiful. So all of that to say, to your question about the four quadrants of quantum sales growth, when I had my own quantum leap experience and was able to go from 100K years to 100K months, it happened so fast. And it was actually not by working harder. And to your point, I appreciate your mirror of the different energy online. It wasn't strategic. It was real. It was very uncomfortable because I brought forth parts of myself that I hadn't brought forth before. But that period of time, things changed and shifted so fast that I was like, what happened? How did I go from, wanting more and wanting to be more and do more and have more for over 10 years, but struggling with that, to within 6 weeks, like everything that I felt like I'd been chasing so hard and that felt so out of reach was there. And this framework downloaded, and to me, very much, I use the word God or source, someone insert their language, but to me, it was a God thing where this is the how, and this is what you're meant to teach on this planet, at least for, right now in my life.
Yeah.
And so the four quadrants of quantum sales growth, and if it's okay, I can share a free training link that people can go to for a much deeper dive as well. Beautiful. So ElyseArcher.com/four quadrants, you can go and learn more. And we've got a beautiful mini
Number
course
4 or FOUR?
I believe, great distinction. It should be both, but the last I saw, definitely the number 4 works.
Okay.
I got to go with my assistant and make sure
I can link it in the show notes. We can continue.
You. That's beautiful. And mention that you came in from Allison's show, please. When you do, there's a place to put referred by. But so there's a deeper dive training that you can go through there. And so really quick at a high level, we call them the 4 M's. And so this is what actually created the quantum leap. And so the first M is mind over matter. And when I say mind over matter, a lot of us may have heard or think kind of the traditional sense around that, like, oh, just push through. It doesn't matter how you
just
feel.
Power through.
Just
pile drive through.
Yeah. You're not going to see that.
Grind it out. Even the words are really visceral, aren't they? That we use, that very masculine.
Yes, I know. I feel like a lot of your listeners are shuddering right now. Like, oh, this is not what I want. So it's not what this means or this is. Mind over matter is literally about how your mind, your self-concept, your subconscious beliefs influence the physical 3D matter in your life. And so one of the things that I teach and that we believe in the program is that your results will never supersede your identity. And so this is why a lot of times
Say that
people will,
again. Say that again,
yeah,
Elyse.
yeah, your results will never supersede your identity. And
What does
so,
that mean?
yeah, this is very important too. Um, like I shared before, I was a woman who would look at the vision board and put the house and the car and the money and the stages. And then I would be like, okay, where is it? It's not coming. And then I would blame myself. I must be doing something wrong. Why does everyone else have this figured out, but not me, etc.
Mm.
And what I wasn't really conscious to in that was that in life, we don't get what we want, we get what we are. And so if you want to ascend, maybe you want to go from 6 to 7 figures, maybe you want to go from middle of the pack to top of the leaderboard in corporate sales, don't make it so much about manifesting the thing itself, whatever it is, the money, the leaderboard position. Make your work manifesting the version of you who has that goal accomplished. And so that's where in this quadrant, I've had a lot of great teachers and mentors in this space, and a lot of the work here for me, a lot of my influence is Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I think is phenomenal, Bob Proctor as well. But so we teach a concept called new personality, old personality. And this would be looking at, all right, for the results that I want, what are the thoughts, feelings, and actions of someone who's at that level? And then understanding and owning that you've got to start doing that. You've got to start being that person, that version of you. And so, and a lot of people aren't willing to do that. And that's why they sit there and they look at what's on their vision board and they're like, all right, I'm waiting, but where is it? So this is what I think separates and distinguishes people who achieve really big goals versus people who don't. And so mind over matter is about learning to build an identity, a self-concept, and a belief system that is in alignment with the results that you want. And there's a lot more to it than that, but for the sake of time, I'll kind of keep that high level. Money is the second quadrant. And this is so beautiful. I could talk about this, like I said to you in the pre-chat, for like 18 hours. But another thing that we teach and that we say is your level of income will never exceed your level of self-worth. And so if we want to, and it's the truth, for so long in my life, I was like, I want to be a 7-figure coach. I want to be a 7-figure earner. That was my initial goal, but I never did it. Why? When I thought about that, the version of me at the time actually felt there was a part of me that didn't feel worthy. All right. And I'm not going to get it from a place of feeling unworthy. It doesn't work that way. So with money, there's so much here, but this is about learning to tap into the vibrational frequency of the amount of money that you desire, right? Every amount of money has different frequency to it. To me, the larger you allow your money to grow and the more you allow yourself to receive, it is about expanding your self-concept. It's about expanding your willingness to be of service and of impact on the planet. It's about seeing yourself in a different way. And there's a lot of healing of money beliefs that needs to happen in here. We've had so much junk indoctrinated into us about money and it being bad, and that we feel guilty or shameful, or we just got so much junk about it. So the free training will go more into that and how to clear money blocks, how to clear limiting beliefs as well. But this is really important. If you're an entrepreneur and you want to hit a certain financial amount in your business this year, you've got to align with that frequency. If you're in corporate, I was working with a private client this morning who wants to do $1 million W-2. And we were working on him aligning with that frequency. Like that's where it all starts. So that piece is really key. The third quadrant is masculine and feminine energy. And I remember,
this. Love it
too. I love it too. And when I first heard, I remember it was probably, 10 years ago, I had my first mentor talk about feminine energy. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was so in my masculine at the time, but I had so much judgment on the feminine. I thought the feminine was weak. I thought it wouldn't get me anywhere. I again, very much an injured feminine energy. And so we all have,
Injured feminine energy.
oh
Wow.
yeah. Yeah. Like
Wow.
victim mode, martyr mode, some
Wow.
princess mode with it too. Yeah. Yeah.
Princess mode.
Oh yeah.
Elise, you got them all.
I had them all. I know. So, and we do a lot of healing work with our clients in this space
Yeah.
because there's all of us have both types of energy. And we want a healthy blend of both. Masculine energy is the doing, it's the structure, it's being goal oriented. That's beautiful. Probably the majority of the women in our community come in and have been entirely in their masculine or almost entirely in their masculine, and they have no idea. And they've cut off things like intuition, receiving, enjoying the process, enjoying the journey, like you were talking about earlier when we were connecting. So the feminine is about your energy. It's about the quantum leap. You'll never quantum leap from masculine energy either. It's too linear. It's too logical. So when we learn how to integrate these two energies within us, that's when magic happens. And so we teach how to do that there. And we call those first three the big three, because that is what actually moves the needle. That's what matters. The fourth and final M is method or strategy. And what I know about strategy is pretty much any strategy can work. It's your belief in it and your belief in yourself that makes the difference. So this is
Wow.
why think about two people in corporate running the same, so it's such masculine language, but everyone's like running the same plays, doing the same playbook, following the same
Right.
script. Why is it that one of them
We
is
all know what this is. We all know what this feels like, though. Like
yeah,
in practical sense of knowing, hey, I can see somebody else moving a lot quicker than I am. And what do I need to do differently or
yes,
copy from them
yeah,
so that I can have the same results? So there is a little bit of the break in formula of like the ABC kind of thing
yeah,
that requires some more, like this is the feminine of inviting more flow, right?
yes. Yes. I love that you use the word flow because that really is so much of what feminine is about. It's like that flow state. We all know it. We can all relate to it because we've all accessed it at one point. And to your point, Allison, that's so good. Um, that's, when we look at someone who's operating at a higher level, a lot of times we ask ourselves, well, what are they doing? I'm just going to do that too. If I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to build that same funnel. If I'm in corporate, I'm going to do that same script. But if you don't do the work to shift your subconscious beliefs, your self concept to align with the financial frequency that they're on, it's not going to happen. It literally won't happen. That's part of the power of the subconscious mind is its job is to make whatever the programs are in your brain your reality. So you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you have a program running of I'm unworthy or I'm bad with money or it's not safe to be visible, whatever the thing is, then you won't have the same results. Your subconscious will actually, it'll like block you from the right ideas. It'll get you distracted when it's time to go take action towards what you want. So it's incredibly powerful. And strategy is great. I love strategy. I've spent, close to 20 years teaching sales and marketing strategy with a lot of top leaders. So that's why we do teach that in the program and I love it. But you've got to layer it on top of that foundation of the first three and that's part of why I think people feel so stuck and frustrated a lot of times is they're only focused on strategy, which according to neuroscience is only 3 to 5% of your results. So yeah, it's a high level. There's a lot more to it, but that is
That
the
was
fourth
so
quadrant.
good because I think you could see yourself in where I think what this framework and what this mindset shift does is it puts you back in the driver's seat to have agency and to almost play with the universe around you and also give yourself back a voice of what is it that you want and allow yourself perhaps to dream again. I think, and I would imagine the listener who, feels like they might have been kind of stopped with the practicality of things and, kind of um, kind of stop themselves based on checks and balances, on calculations. That part is really challenging. And that blend of the masculine and feminine can really, really help. I'm curious, Elyse, about how would you define success? And how would you have defined success 5 years ago?
Oh, yeah. Success 5 years ago would have been, it would have been all external, pretty much all external. And funny enough, it would be defining a lot of the things that I'm now living and experiencing. But it would have been coming from a total place of lack and not enoughness and unworthiness. And if I can just do those things, if I can just make that amount in my business, if I can have, this ranking on my podcast or whatever, then I'll be successful. So it was all external driven. To me now, I have big goals. I'm always setting bigger goals. I love that. But there's a quote from Bob Proctor. He said, goals are not to get, they're to grow. So like we're going for a next level goal in our business right now, and it's beautiful. And I got to overcome a lot of limiting beliefs around it, but I did it. And I said yes to it because I know it is my next level of growth as a soul, as a human being. And so for me, success is every day, did I live as the fullest expression of me? Did I play full out? Did I show up in my greatness today? And also, was I happy today? Did I enjoy today? Now that we don't have human experiences and get to regulate our nervous system and do the things which we absolutely do. And I have days of contrast just like everyone else. But to me, the days where I'm like, that was successful, it's the days where I played full out. I got out of my comfort zone. I worked on being the version of me with my next level goal accomplished. I showed up as her. And I also had fun and I enjoyed it. And I remembered what life was really about along the way. So
how do you coach people through, or yourself through, contrast?
Yeah. So Abraham Hicks teaches this, and I love it. Contrast lives at the edge of your next level. And so when we are in a time of contrast, and that can be a couple of minutes, or it can be a year or beyond, right? Understanding that there is something. So when we're experiencing, and for somebody who's not familiar with the language, contrast, you could just define it as something that we might label negative, right? Now, I believe that nothing is good or bad. It just is. It's neutral, and it's all about the meaning that we assign it. But when you're going through a period where things feel hard or things feel challenging, my personal experience and what I do is I look at, okay, there's something new that's seeking to emerge here. There's some sort of a shakeup that's happening, and I'm being asked to be aware of it because there's something in me that wants to grow. There's something in me that wants to evolve. And my job in that time is to recognize that and say, who would I need to become in order to overcome this, right? Maybe I need to become more loving. Maybe I need to become more abundant feeling. Maybe I need to become more generous. But then also to recognize that by law, the law of opposites, it's a universal law. When we are setting a new goal, maybe it's a new income goal, a new revenue goal in our business, the law of opposites states that by law, the opposite must be created first in order to create the contextual field for you to understand and manifest what it is that you want. So people think, they say, okay, I'm setting a new goal in my business. They're all excited. And then they get a big bill, or they have like their top client drop off. And they're like, what is going on? That's exactly the opposite of what I wanted. Right. A lot of people think that means that something is wrong, and they get caught up in it and they emotionalize it. And then they actually make the contrast last way longer than it needed to, because whatever we emotionalize and focus on, we're going to get more of.
Right.
However, someone who understands this law knows that, oh my gosh, I'm on my way. The fact that I set a goal for something bigger, or maybe it's more health, and then suddenly you have a health scare, it means you are on your way. The opposite has been created. Beautiful. Now you have a better way to clarify and understand and define what it is that you want. And that is the next step, is to receive what it is that you actually want. So that's why, to me, the Abraham Hicks quote of contrast lives at the edge of your next level. We can lean into that and say, I understand that contrast is not negotiable. It's not something I can escape from. But if I can understand it for what it is, I've just set a new, bigger goal. Now I'm experiencing some contrast. Okay, I'm on the right track. So what beliefs would I need to have right now in order to support me through this? Who would I need to be? Right? Maybe I need to be more calm, more peaceful, more grateful, experience the blessings that are already all around me, right? I know that by law, what I want is coming. And it's all that perspective shift that shortens the experience around the contrast, the time around it.
Yeah.
And then you become a match for what it is that you want.
I think about that meme that goes around like, God, I've had enough plot points and plot twists. It's kind of like that. I think I got the point. Can I get like the blessings already?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think if you're okay with it, because I know we are a little over time. Are you okay? I have one final
okay for
question.
a couple more minutes. Yeah. I
have one final question for you. Something that you say a lot is your desires are green lights. Can you explain that? Because I think it's a perfect place to close up.
Yes, I love that. So I used to make myself really wrong for wanting more. And maybe a lot of your listeners can relate to this, where
I should be happy with what I have. I have so much. Why do I feel guilt? I am grateful.
Yeah.
Why do I want more? Why isn't this enough? I'm just speaking for others, I guess.
Speaking for everyone
like that. But truly, like you who are listening are probably listening because you are in a state of transition and thinking, why isn't this enough? That tension of, I know there is more here. I'm not quite sure how to get there. So you continue.
Oh, I love it. You just said it. You said it so beautifully. So thank you for that. So I used to feel that way too. And what I have learned is that whatever the desire is that's flowing through you, whether it's to launch a business, maybe you're listening to this podcast because you are in a place of reinvention. So you're maybe wanting to leave corporate and launch a business, or you're wanting to maybe change your business model. You're wanting to shift your self-concept, whatever it is, you're wanting more money, different life experiences, the RV. I used to make myself wrong for wanting more. And yet what I have learned, and this is through a lot of spiritual study as well, the word desire, if you break it down, the etymology, desire literally means of the Father. And so, again, it's not about a religious thing, but that desire flowing through you for more, that is your soul's calling of you to your next iteration, to your next evolution, to what is going to be your next greatest self-expression. And so your job, it's not to know the how, it's not to get caught up in the how, but your job is to follow that, because we are meant, as spiritual beings having a human experience, we are meant to consistently expand and experience more of ourselves. And it's not about materialism or like a chase for more, but it's about you being open to your soul's unfolding and seeing how good life can get and seeing how expansive your life can get, and trusting that desire flowing through you is leading you in the right direction. And that will never, never, never steer you wrong.
Beautiful. Well, Elyse, thank you so much for this. How do people find you, work with you, all of it?
Thank you. No, this was so beautiful, Allison. So if someone goes to elysearcher.com/free call, you can request a call with my team there. I mean, everything is on my website, elysearcher.com, but that link will take you to a place where you can request a free call. Again, mention that you came in from Allison's show and her podcast. And more than happy to connect with anyone who's listening about programs, resources, opportunities, upcoming events as well. And then we just launched a new podcast, Superhuman Selling, which Allison is going to be a guest on, which I'm so excited for. I
Can't
cannot wait for that. You are one of my favorite podcast guests of all time. It's always such a great conversation. Aww. And so that would be a beautiful place to connect as well, just for more content like this.
It's so good. Elyse, thank you so much. You have been so consequential in the most beautiful way in my life. And if I don't have the opportunity to tell you how much you have changed my life, allow me to do it publicly on the Reinvention Room. Thank you so much, Elyse.
Thank you. I love you. So grateful for you.